Hey, welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes, our weekly review of some of the big stories making headlines in the industry, and maybe some you might have missed. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This week, we're jumping into Taylor Swift endorsing Harris, citing AI-generated misinformation. Google's second antitrust case this year begins in Virginia, and why a Silicon Valley startup is building data centers underwater. This week, to discuss all this, I'm joined by Paresh Dave, senior writer at Wired. Welcome, Paresh.
Great to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. So as always, we're going to start off with our Byte of the Week. This is a number that gives us some insight into the week's big tech stories. So Paresh, what's your number this week?
I've got 10.02 million for you. So that's the number of likes on Taylor Swift's post on Tuesday night within about 24 hours. So that's more than the 6 million that she usually averages. And it's tracking to surpass her most popular post, which was back in April, announcing her new album. So
oh my gosh,
it'll probably be Taylor Swift's most liked Instagram post ever.
Wow, that is amazing. Of course, we had to talk about Taylor Swift because who doesn't want to talk about Taylor Swift? But we do have a tech angle. We have a very strong tech angle. So on Tuesday night, as you noted, minutes after the presidential debate, she dropped this post on Instagram endorsing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. As for why she decided to do this now, she writes, "Recently, I was made aware that AI of me falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to this site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation." Paresh, I think it's safe to say this is maybe the first political endorsement we've seen caused by a deep fake. Maybe the first, maybe not the last.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most fascinating thing. Tech journalists, researchers have been waiting to see if generative AI would affect this election. And it sort of affected it in a way that I think no one really expected, which was spurring an endorsement because of these posts that Donald Trump had been sharing on Truth Social that appeared to be doctored in some way and showing, Swifties for Trump and even her saying, you should vote for Trump. I think, she said in her post that the simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. There is some truth to that, but, I think researchers would say that is just one way that we need to combat information. But it's interesting that it caused her to at least pursue this avenue.
Yeah, it is really interesting because, as you noted, I think so many people have been concerned about how AI might play out in this election, whether deep fakes might be used, by malicious actors to kind of manipulate voters. I would say this is probably a case, maybe not of a deep fakes, maybe kind of shallow fakes. These are pretty crude AI images. I don't think they're really fooling anyone. But that is kind of what we've been seeing this election, right? I mean, I've seen a ton of, Kamala Harris imagery, like in communist regalia and this kind of stuff. Obviously, this has kind of been the extremely online election. We've been seeing a lot of memes, and it seems like AI is just kind of taking it up a notch.
Absolutely. But you have to remember, Taylor Swift seems to be speaking from a position as a woman too, which is important here. And there's been so many issues with sort of deep fakes that show people in states of undress or, these nudify apps that have been causing so much trouble. So I think this is Taylor also saying that there's a problem here with how we're using AI. And we need to be cognizant of that. And she's not going to be afraid to sort of, step out of line and say, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, really fascinating development in terms of kind of the public awareness of this problem for sure. But now we want to talk about a problem for Google. It's second antitrust case, of course, just a little over a month ago, a court declared that Google's search business was a monopoly. Now we have this other antitrust case that is looking into its ad business. What is the government arguing here?
So the government is arguing that Google has monopolies over three key links of sort of the advertising supply chain. So an advertiser buys an ad. At some point, it ends up on your, computer screen or your phone screen or your tablet screen, and there are a bunch of intermediaries that ad goes through before it ends up on your screen. And Google basically, controls anywhere from sort of 50 to 90% of three of those pieces. And the government says that's a problem. And it's a problem how they tie those sort of pieces together to continue to dominate the market.
Google's overall advertising business, I guess, accounts for more than 75% of Alphabet's revenue. And the company has an 87% market share in ad selling technology. Of course, Google has many different ways that it sells ads. It shows up kind of in your search results. That's one form of advertising. This is the arm that is, kind of how they buy and sell advertising space on websites. And this is of particular importance to publishers, right? Like the companies we work for. I mean, what is at stake for news organizations? Kind of what's going on in this case that they might be paying particular attention to?
Absolutely. So the government's argument is that because Google sort of is taking too much of the money that goes into the payment for an ad, less money is going to content creators, to publishers. And what we could see here is, if this goes the government's way, Google being forced to lower prices, more competition that brings down prices as well. And that should mean better prices for not just advertisers, but also more revenue for those publishers or content creators, because Google won't be able to extract, what are called sort of, unfair monopoly prices.
So this trial is getting started as we are still waiting to hear in the other case about what the remedy will be, how much, its current search business might be broken up. So, I mean, this just seems like a pretty remarkable time for Google, for kind of antitrust in big tech.
Absolutely. And like one thing that I like to pay attention to is how is all of this going to affect consumers? I think
Mm.
in the search case, it's going to be, an opportunity for people who prefer alternative search engines to be able to more easily use those search engines. That's what we expect the remedy to be. In this ads case, again, if it goes the government's way, it's not just sort of more money for publishers. There's also potential that ads will become less annoying on the internet, which is sort of good for consumers because we might see publishers reduce the number of ads on pages, or ads could become more relevant. So there's potential benefits there for consumers as well.
All right, we can hope. Now to my favorite story of the week, and this is a story that you co-reported for Wired about underwater data centers. This company that is trying to build data centers, which are the hot property for AI, training and deployment. Everyone needs data centers right now. They want to build them underwater and potentially in the San Francisco Bay. What is their pitch?
So these data centers are needed because we're short on electricity in the places that are ideal for building data centers, where it would be close to large population centers. And data centers use a lot of electricity and a lot of water. So this is a chance to sort of get good locations and less power usage, because the pitch is that you can use sort of the seawater or ocean water to help cool these very hot data centers and reduce the need for sort of air conditioning or liquid cooling.
So, this company actually has a plan to kind of do a proof of concept. They have a small capsule GPU that they intend to submerge in San Francisco Bay. I mean, can you just do that?
So regulators we reached out to said no. The startup about a couple of weeks ago announced that we're going to do a test in San Francisco Bay in a month, and that prompted us, my colleague Reese Rogers and I, to reach out to regulators and say, do these guys have a permit? This is sort of a couple of young entrepreneurs who've started this company, Network Ocean. And it turned out that all the regulators we had spoke to had never heard about this test, and they, sort of universally said that permits would be needed. and this company insists that they are not needed. And it sort of brings up this tension that we're increasingly seeing, where there are things that could sort of help solve climate change, but they could have environmental harm. And we kind of have to sort of balance that as a society increasingly.
Right. And this kind of move fast and break stuff mentality, when it runs into all of the administrative and regulatory fences of, trying to trying to do something that could affect the environment, especially in California, it gets pretty thorny.
Yeah, this startup is part of, or was part of, the Y Combinator, like, sort of startup development program. And Y Combinator has a lot of maxims about sort of like, test and find your like market fit. And some of these maxims don't necessarily allow for, wait around for 2 years, spend $1 million, and get a permit.
Um, but again, this is going to be an ongoing issue. How do we power in a sustainable manner all of this AI development that is taking place? Uh, have you been invited to this launch?
We were hoping to be. We'll see if it happens still, or if regulators will step in.
All
But I
right.
will say, there's more companies doing all kinds of interesting things, like trying to shine sunlight at night to sort of farms using satellites.
Right.
So there's a lot of companies to pay attention to here, and how they might affect the environment.
Well, thank you so much, Paresh. That's Paresh Tave, senior writer at Wired. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Rosie Hughes produced this episode. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This is APM.